Hi everyone, welcome to our last lecture. We've made our way through the 5 types of evaluations common in the field of program evaluation. Today, we are going to spend a bit of time situating evaluations in their broader social and political landscape, discuss evaluation as a profession, and wrap up the course with details about the final exam and some of my final thoughts. It's going to be a short and hopefully sweet end to our 12 weeks together. Let's start by situating our evaluations. An inescapable consideration for the evaluation of social programs is the complexity of the social world in which they operate and in which the evaluator is conducting their business. Individuals, groups, organizations, and communities will often have different priorities, pressures, and politics. These form the arena in which the program and the evaluation are operating. Social ecology is the term often applied to this set of interconnectedness, paving the social landscape between the individual level in relation to their immediate relationships with their community and the wider society around them. For evaluators, understanding where the program is situated in the broader social and political context is important. If a program was developed to meet the need of a new piece of legislature at the federal level, or whether it was created in response to community level demands, will affect the evaluator's role and positioning. I threw in a couple of quick diagrams onto the slide just to help you picture where a program evaluation lives in this social ecology. So the top one just summarizes kind of that basic relationship between the individual level, relationships with others, community level relationships, and then finally that broader societal relationship system. The bottom one ties it a bit more closely to program evaluation, project management, policy formation. A lot of these disciplines will use a similar hierarchy to visualize where the program or project rests. So again, at the heart is the individual level, which is influenced by those interpersonal relationships, so family and friends, community educators, etc. That in turn is influenced by the organizational level. So here we're talking about local health departments or municipal programs or faith-based organizations. Next up is the community that's framing that. So this level includes the media, professional or research institutions, social media, any of those community level groups. And then finally, we have the policy level, which can involve some of those higher level organizations that we're used to that are making decisions for the public with the public in mind. So this one's clearly very American. Here we're looking at the Food and Drug Administration, National Institutes of Health, World Health Organization. In Canada, we might be looking at the, Department of Justice, Department of National Defense, etc., or provincial level governments such as the Ministry of the Attorney General or the OPP in my case for where I work. These levels influence each other, and they influence each other back and forth. The policy level will have a trickle-down effect on the community, the organizational level, the interpersonal level, and the individual. But the policy level won't exist without the individual level, which influences the interpersonal, the organization, and the community. Our programs will exist at one of these levels. If it's a federal program that we're evaluating, it's probably going to live in the policy level. If it is a program that Nipissing University is running, that may live in the organizational level or the community level, depending on how you look at it. They can kind of blur. I just wanted to give you a visual so that you can kind of see where a program might reside in this social ecology, but also the influences that are going to be present depending on where the program is situated. Within this social landscape or this social ecology, then, you can imagine that often there are multiple stakeholders involved at different levels who are influencing the evaluation, influencing the program, and have their own respective needs and perspectives that they bring to the table. Regardless of the scale or complexity of the evaluative efforts, the evaluator is often situated among multiple stakeholders. Oftentimes, these stakeholders will have differing perspectives about the purpose, meaning, and importance of the results of the evaluation. Part of this comes from their positionality in relation to the program. Some of the results may be good news for some stakeholders, but some results may also be bad news for other stakeholders. The difference in stakeholder positions can lead to different reactions. For those stakeholders receiving bad news from the evaluation, their reaction may become antagonistic. They may seek to undermine the credibility of the evaluation, no matter how rigorously it was completed. In other situations, the stakeholders with competing interests may find themselves at odds with each other or in conflict. As you can imagine, the results of an evaluation can be deeply challenging or affirming depending on what the results are and where the recipient is positioned in the social ecology. Evaluation results can be particularly sensitive, as the evaluator not only presents results, but ultimately makes judgment calls on the value, utility, and worth of a program. Almost without fail, the stakeholders most interested and engaged with the outcomes of an evaluation are the program and evaluation sponsors and funders, the program staff, and the program managers. They have the most invested in terms of time, money, and what I like to call heart work, the personal investments in the program's value. Others, such as the program beneficiaries, may be interested in an evaluation's results overall, but are less likely to be as engaged with the evaluative process and outcomes. For example, consider how often you would expect the program manager to read the evaluation report compared to the people who went through the program and have gone on living their lives beyond it. However, it's important to be aware of the considerations or consequences that can arise with the involvement of multiple stakeholders. Remember, the evaluative process is only one part of an informed decision-making process involving the various stakeholders, and also that these stakeholders may experience tensions among themselves. Having a multiplicity of stakeholders can also strain evaluators in three main ways. It can make it difficult for us to determine the perspective that we should take in our evaluation design. Should we look from the lens of, say, the government organization that led the program development? Should we look from the lens of society as a whole? Or should we look from the lens of the boots on the ground individuals, those that are operating the program? Another strain on the evaluator is that it can complicate the anticipated responses to the evaluation findings. No matter how well the evaluator situates themselves and how clearly they articulate the perspectives of the evaluation, it is likely that someone will be less than fully satisfied or happy with the outcome. Sometimes this can have a negative impact on the evaluator even, such as the loss of support of the evaluation sponsors, which then could inhibit or constrain the evaluator's future projects. Thirdly and lastly, having multiple stakeholders can increase the difficulties in communicating with different stakeholders, and this can result in misunderstandings or misinterpretations of what the evaluator is trying to convey. While, as many of you have likely noticed, the vocabulary of evaluation is often similar to that of the social sciences, which makes it familiar for many who have some background or coursework in this area, you have to remember that for many stakeholders, this is not a common vernacular or language. Thus, whatever may be presented as very clear to you as the evaluator and to other evaluators or social scientists, it may be unclear to those coming from different academic and substantive backgrounds. While these challenges may not be avoidable, an evaluator's awareness of them can help to alleviate some of the strain and complications that can arise. Let's also turn our attention to how we share our evaluations results. So dissemination refers to the activities through which knowledge about an evaluation's findings is made available to the relevant audiences. Dissemination is how we get our information to those who need it, which obviously is a key element of the evaluation. If the people who need the results don't get the information produced from the evaluation, then our findings can't influence the next steps, the decisions, recommendations, policies, and so forth. Thus, dissemination is a critical responsibility of evaluation researchers. If we don't take considerable and appropriate steps to distribute the information we've produced, it will have little influence and may ultimately be ignored, no matter how well the evaluation was executed or how important the findings were. A fulsome technical report summarizing all aspects of the evaluation, including the purpose, evaluation questions, methodologies, etc., will often be produced as the primary form of dissemination. But realistically, only a handful of interested, keen, and data literate individuals may actually read it. Technical reports are important, but they are not easily accessible or understood by many stakeholders. Compare it to giving someone a scientific journal article who has no background or familiarity with the discipline. The report itself is often a barrier to the effective dissemination of the information beyond the fellow scientists who work in that field. So, every evaluator then needs to learn to be what we call a secondary disseminator. Secondary dissemination refers to the communication of results and recommendations that emerge from evaluations in ways that meet the needs of the stakeholders. They supplement the primary dissemination to sponsors and that technical audience, which in most cases is the initial technical report. Secondary dissemination may take different forms, including abbreviated summaries of the purpose and study findings, and we often call those executive summaries or research briefs. It can look like special reports in more attractive and accessible formats. It could be oral briefings, complete with slides and verbal presentation. And sometimes it might even look like a video produced to encapsulate the quick wins or the quick findings of the evaluation. Ultimately, The goal of secondary dissemination is to provide the results in a manner that is efficient and effective for the audience you need to reach, or in other words, to make the presentation of the findings suitable, accessible, and digestible by the audience. So we've talked a bit about the social ecology of the evaluation, our stakeholders, how the stakeholders will influence even the dissemination methods that we will use to communicate the results of our evaluation. But let's now talk about evaluation as a political process. We have previously discussed how and when evaluations can be utilized to affect change. This can take the form of identifying social problems that are in need of solutions or interventions, testing that a program is foundationally sound, determining how well a program has been rolled out, assessing the outcomes on the program participants, and examining the cost and efficiencies of the programs. All of these processes operated not only in the social landscape containing the target population, but also in the political arena. As confident as we may be in our methodologies and interpretation of results, and as impactful as our results may be sometimes, they won't always be incorporated or used in actual practice. Often there are larger external political contexts that influence this. For one thing, evaluations, especially those directed at assessing program impact, take time. Particularly large-scale impact evaluations that estimate the net effects of major innovative programs can require years to complete and disseminate. However, the political landscape often moves much more quickly than this, responding to public and organizational pressures and leaving our evaluation behind as the next hot topic takes priority and new budgets are approved. In these cases, evaluations may simply take too long, or on the flip side, they may be rushed to completion, resulting in an inferior evaluative process. In some cases, the results of the evaluation will simply be discounted and ignored, which is particularly disheartening, not to mention concerning at times. Another way that evaluation can be particularly political relates to the significance of our findings for policy. The purpose of evaluations are typically practical and political in nature. In addition to the issues that we have already reviewed, the fact that evaluations are ultimately conducted to affect policy-making process introduces several considerations that distinguish evaluation research from other forms of social science research. Our results are meant to be used for politic-related decision-making, and particularly to inform the creation of new social policies. Because of this, our evaluations need to be attuned to and attentive towards the current policy space that surrounds it. This means that alternatives and approaches must be feasible to the political and policy climate of the day, which is continuously evolving and changing. Another way to look at policy space is to think of it as the space for social welfare objectives, which is expanded or constrained through support or opposition in the areas of actor influence, narratives and agendas, and the characteristics of the policy issues at stake, all within their broader political, institutional, and social context. So, an evaluator will want to consider not only what the current policy space would support, but also where we might be heading in the not so distant future. There may not be support for the ideas now, but the evaluator can do due diligence and try to predict that support is likely to come in the near future. Additionally, the fact that evaluations are conducted abide by many of the same tenets and assumptions as widely accepted social science practice, may make them more objective than other modes of judging social programs. However, this is only of relevance if it addresses the values of the persons engaged in the policymaking, program planning, and management. This basically boils down to the significance of the evaluation to policy. So how do we give our evaluation the best chance of being utilized and having utility? 7 factors are becoming increasingly common as standard or highly favored approaches. You'll notice that much of this involves the ongoing evaluation and monitoring of a program rather than standalone retrospective practices. So these 7 include planning for the use of the evaluation at the beginning of the project. So not only designing the evaluation, but planning for what that evaluation will inform what it is going to be used for once completed. The second one is identifying and prioritizing the intended uses of the evaluation. So this builds on the first concept, but it also takes it a step further by defining it and prioritizing the uses of that evaluation so that whenever the evaluation is completed, it can efficiently target those priority needs and, if needed, push others to the back burner, possibly for future evaluation should that take place. The third is that we want to be considering how we're going to be communicating our findings to our stakeholders. So this isn't just at the end, but as the evaluation progresses, will we have regular updates? Will we send out regular meeting invites to give small briefings on where we are and what we're finding? The fourth is identifying and prioritizing those intended users. So it's the same as identifying your stakeholders. Who will need to know the results of our evaluation? Not all of the stakeholders in the program may be interested in the evaluation's results, or they may be interested in the results at differing levels, meaning some might be interested in that highly technical, large document that's going to be produced at the end as a report. Some might just need a quick email with a couple of bullet points giving them the quick summary of what we found. This, of course, will depend on their positionality in that social ecology and the ecology of the program. The fifth is to involve the stakeholders in the process. That's something we've been talking about all semester, is having that contact and having that open dialogue with your stakeholders to get their opinions, to get their needs, to understand where they are and what they're looking for. The sixth is developing a communication and a reporting plan. So we covered a bit of that last week when we were talking about our evaluation proposal. How are we going to communicate our findings? Are we going to wait till the very end? Are we going to give updates along the way? What will the communication plan look like? What will the timeline look like? And finally, the seventh factor that impacts or helps to ensure that our evaluation will have utility and will be utilized is interweaving the evaluation into the organizational processes and procedures. So by this we mean the more that we can mesh what we're doing with what the organization is doing and actually embed our practices as regular matters of everyday business, the more likely that what we produce will impact that everyday business going forward. Outside of the social landscape that evaluators work in is the professional landscape of the evaluation field. As we've discussed before, the evaluation field is still fairly young compared to its social science counterparts. As such, the field is constantly evolving and has yet to have as firmly entrenched professional standards and structures as, say, psychology or sociology. The field of evaluation work has a truly multidisciplinary background, providing a richly diverse intellectual heritage. It has benefited from contributions by individuals trained in the traditional social science disciplines, including economics, psychology, sociology, political science, and anthropology. It has also benefited from contributions from those with backgrounds in public policy, medicine, public health, social work, urban planning, public administration, education, statistics and biostatistics, econometrics, psychometrics, etc. However, this leaves the evaluator in an ever-evolving, highly comprehensive field where it's almost impossible to be a true expert in absolutely every component used in evaluation. This can be both challenging and exciting to be part of. At this point, evaluators are not licensed or certified in the same way that, for example, lawyers, medical practitioners, and teachers are. There are no guarantees that a person identifying themselves as an evaluator would meet the informal standards for the profession if reviewed by other evaluators. Indeed, the identification of a person as an evaluator provides no assurance that he or she shares any core knowledge or training with any other person that's also identified as an evaluator. However, there has been gradual movement towards the professionalization of the evaluation field, which is visibly evidenced by the large number of national and regional organizations of evaluators. In Canada, we have the Canadian Evaluation Society, which has chapters in many provinces within the country. Possibly the most widely known professional organization is the American Evaluation Association, the AEA, which not only has members in the US but around the world. Additionally, there are other professional associations and societies around the world bringing evaluators together, often offering conferences, training, and networking opportunities to help grow the field and providing the beginnings of oversight to the field. It's also a place of dialogue where people practicing evaluation can get together to discuss what it means to be an evaluator and what the standards and guidelines should be for our field. Additionally, there is movement in the field for credentialism. So other fields use this as a mean of professionalizing their trade. For example, project management professionals often have the PMP designation, and this can be attained through a governing body to indicate that the individual has met the benchmarks in the field through experience, testing, knowledge, and other benchmarks. Similarly, crime analysts can obtain a credential from a governing body in the field based on meeting benchmarks for experience, knowledge, training, and time in the field. For evaluators, the Canadian Evaluation Society has created the CE designation, which stands for Credentialed Evaluator. Paraphrasing from the Canadian Evaluation Society website, the Credentialed Evaluator, CE designation, validates that an individual's knowledge and experience, their dedication to high quality and competent evaluation, and their commitment to continuous learning. Applicants must meet several criteria that is based upon their professional involvement in the field, education, work experience, competency, and ongoing commitment to evaluation. So here we are at the end of our course content. The world of evaluation is not going anywhere. If anything, we're only in the growing stages of what will become an increasingly recognized and sought after discipline and practice. The world continues to seek solutions to social needs at various levels. Organizations, communities, and neighborhoods, towns, cities, states, and provinces, all of which are oftentimes addressed by program interventions. Thus, the need for program evaluations. There is a growing recognition of the utility of evaluations, that it is a practical and applied approach to assess interventions which can assist in improvements, evidence to continue or discontinue a program, the value for money, all of which is backed by evidence-based results. Evaluation is building a reputation, one evaluation at a time, as a worthwhile endeavor that can make an evidence-based impact socially, politically, organizationally, and individually. We're in the midst of the evidence-based movement. Organizations, governments, and individuals are developing an appetite for data-based evidence to support decisions, policies, opinions, and viewpoints. This stems not only from the evaluation field, but from the current prevention and intervention literatures in areas such as public health, mental health, criminal justice, education, etc. For evaluation, it means increased support and appreciation for programs that have been demonstrated to be effective through the systematic evaluation process. These programs are becoming favored over programs that have been traditionally believed to work but never systematically tested. Just as a detective looks for evidence of the crime, we as evaluators are looking for the evidence to support the program. Evaluation is an applied, transferable, marketable skill, and this course has afforded you the opportunity to develop the foundational knowledge and toolbox that will allow you to execute an evaluation. Perhaps you may be interested in this as a career path. If so, I'd recommend visiting the websites for the American Evaluation Association and the Canadian Evaluation Society as a start. Here you can learn more about the job opportunities in this area and what the workday might look like in this sector. Or perhaps you will continue on into other career fields. Remember that evaluations can be found in many different disciplines, and you are now equipped to meet the challenge should it arise. At the very least, I suspect most of you will walk away with a more critical lens towards social programs and interventions, which can only benefit future discussions and dialogues as you move forward. So here we are at the end of our 12 weeks together. Let's take a quick moment and walk through what you can expect for the upcoming final exam. This is going to be the same format as the midterm, so it will be very familiar to you. It's going to have a mix of multiple choice and true-false questions. It's going to be comprised of no more than 60 questions. I believe your midterm ended up being 57, and we're looking at about the same ballpark for the final exam. The content will cover the second half of the course. That means chapters 6 to 12 of the textbook and the lectures of week 6 to 12. However, do keep in mind that since the material builds upon itself, the greater your understanding of the course as a whole, the better you will perform. For example, I won't ask you to give the definition of a stakeholder because we discussed that in the first half of the term. But you need to understand what a stakeholder is if I were to ask you about their role, say, in an impact evaluation. You will not be tested on the content of the journal articles used in the application assignments. The test will be available on Blackboard only, starting April 11th at 7 a.m. It will be available for 48 hours, meaning that it will close at 7 a.m. on April 13th. Just like the midterm, you can start it at any point in that window. Once you start it, you will have 2.5 hours to complete it. Just like your midterm, it is open book. You can use your notes, lectures, and textbook materials. I expect that you will do this independently. Remember that open book tests are not a substitute or replacement for good study preparation. And we covered this, I did mention this to you guys after the midterm. If you lost time from searching your notes, it may reflect on areas to improve, whether that be related to note and material organization, increased time spent studying so that you don't have to rely heavily on your notes and text. Additionally, some questions, just like last time, will test your understanding of the concepts, not just your ability to memorize, locate, and recall. These questions will ask you to differentiate between concepts or give you a situation where you need to apply the content to a new situation that you have not seen before, but which will be similar to that covered in lecture or the text. That means that your notes or the book may help you sort through the question, but you won't find the answer in them. All this to say, I do highly encourage studying for an open book test as thoroughly as you would for a closed book test. The notes should be a support. Your materials should be a tool. But if you're preparing adequately, you should not need to rely solely on the materials in front of you. They should be the backup to help you for those trickier questions. That's just my suggestion. That is something I learned in my undergrad and grad experience and journey. Take it with a grain of salt for yourself, but that is what I would suggest and encourage. And with that, we're at the end of our course and time together. I will be grading the final papers immediately and reviewing the exams once completed so that I can submit your final grades promptly. As a reminder, you were likely emailed a link inviting you to complete the course evaluations for your courses this semester. I really encourage you to take a moment to do so if you can. For a course like this, it may be the only direct feedback I get from you since so much of it was online. On that note, I hope that you have found our journey through program evaluation interesting and have an increased appreciation for what it takes to answer seemingly straightforward questions about a program's foundational strength, implementation, impact, and value. I've enjoyed sharing my interest in this discipline with you over the past 12 weeks. As this is a fourth-year course, many of you will soon be on your way out of Nipissing University's doors and into your next chapter. Whatever that may look like for you, wherever that may be, I wish you all the best. Thank you for sharing your time with me this semester, and take care of yourselves.